Jerome Laxale is the Labor MP for Bennelong. He's also just been elected the chair of the Federal Parliament's Electoral Matters Committee, which I promise you is more interesting than the title might indicate. A very good morning to you, Jerome.
Thanks, Hamish. Look, one for the electoral nerds, but also looks at some very important stuff about strengthening and protecting our democracy. So a real honour to be part of that committee and to be elected as chair.
Yeah, can you just explain what exactly you'll be looking at? Because I think this relates to some of the matters that we've spoken to you about actually since the election, and many Sydney-siders experienced, particularly at polling stations in and around the election.
Yeah, look, I mean, after each election, the committee conducts a review into the election preceding it. So there was one in 2022 about the 2022 election and so on and so forth. And each have their theme. I think the theme of this one is definitely safety and security. I think I've told you on the public record, and we've seen it reported not only here in Sydney but across the country. There were things that happened on booths at this election which were disturbing and quite unique to 2025. Third-party campaigners in particular seemed to cross the line that electors just didn't want Australian politics to go there and our democracy to go down that route. We'll be trying to take as much evidence as we can across the country about that and other issues at the 2025 election. We'll make evidence-based recommendations to government to see what further steps need to be taken to ensure that we don't get a repeat. No one should feel intimidated, harassed or unsafe when they participate in our wonderful Australian democracy, and that certainly was the case in 2025.
So what can be done about this sort of activity? Because you obviously want a really engaged society. One of the great things about Australian democracy is that we do all participate. It's not just that the voting's compulsory, but that, you know, if you feel particularly enthusiastic or passionate, you can get more involved. You can hand out flyers. You can encourage people to vote a particular way, and that maybe that, you know, there are features of that can be very positive.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, what we experienced was very unique to 2025. I've been doing this for 30 years longer and have never experienced issues like that in the past.
Just for listeners that maybe haven't heard you talking about this before, what is it that actually happened at this election? Because we heard from a lot of people right around Sydney that this particularly bothered them.
It wasn't just candidates, it was volunteers, it was voters. Most importantly, the voter experience went down. I had people who are neurodivergent who just had a terrible time walking down this gauntlet of noise, surrounded by people, handing out flyers and shouting slogans at them. It was just taken to a level that I think the electorate really didn't like and responded pretty negatively to. And you asked, what can we do about it? Well, first thing we need to do is get evidence from around the country. People would have had different experiences in different electorates. Then obviously we need to look at that. We don't want to limit, or we don't want to make recommendations that are, of course, unconstitutional. There are protections in the Constitution for political participation. But I think, you know, a reasonable person would suggest, particularly in marginal seats across the country, some of the behaviour was over the top. And that's something that we just need to look at moving forward.
Obviously, the experience in Bennelong, where you are, was that there was a significant number of members of the exclusive Brethren, or the Plymouth Brethren, as they're sometimes known. Are you just looking at that, or are there more examples of groups, third-party organisations that have been involved?
Oh, you know, lucky us, we had more than just the Plymouth Brethren. We had other third-party organisations, and I'm sure the experience was the same across the country. I think, you know, let's not preempt the inquiry here. Let's just get the evidence from volunteers and particularly from voters. I distinctly remember talking to a voter after having walked through the gauntlet and come back out, and she's like, I cannot do that again. I do not want to experience this the next time I vote, and I don't want Australians feeling disenfranchised from participating in our electoral system, because that's what makes, our democracy great. We've got one of the oldest stable democracies in the world. There's a reason for that. And we don't want people to be turned away from voting booths or from participating.
1300 222 702 is the number. Love to hear from you this morning. If you had some experience of this at the federal election, if people do want to contribute, get involved, give evidence, what do they do?
So we'll establish the inquiry. We need terms of reference from the minister. I'll be putting out as much as I can in the media and on social media. There'll be public hearings in most capital cities across the country. We're taking it to the regions. And obviously people can just write a submission. All that information will come out once the inquiry is established. It might go for 6 to 12 months. I want to do this properly because I think there is a lot of angry people coming out of the 2025 election, and I think we've got a role to play here.
It's 6 minutes to 9. The next news bulletin coming up very soon, and we'll have the latest for you on the ferry services to Parramatta, but also the situation at Sydney Airport this morning due to the fog. Most of the fog does appear to be clearing at the moment. Jerome Laxale is here, the Labor MP for Bennelong. Penny Wong's been out speaking this morning on ABC Breakfast, talking about the possible recognition of a Palestinian state. How much are you hearing on this particular issue from your constituents, Jerome Laxale?
Oh, it's top issue in our inbox. Comments, phone calls at street stalls, and understandably, that explains. Some people were surprised that this many people turned out on Sunday for the march. I'm not surprised. This has been a big issue for a lot of people for a long time, and understandably, the images that we're seeing, the news reports we're reading are just absolutely horrific, and they've gone to another level in the last month or two. I think it's important that we recognise that Sunday was an important exhibition of that horror, and the fact that people find this issue incredibly distressing and important. It's very. I would imagine I'm not the only MP that receives that amount of correspondence and discussion about this.
I'm curious to know what it is that voters in your electorate actually want, though. Jonathan in Neutral Bay, not in your electorate, texted as soon as I mentioned this, saying no ifs or buts. Check Penny Wong's socials. Australians want sanctions now against Israel. Not talk, not wishes. Definitely no phony calls with Netanyahu. Penny and Albo better start listening to us. What is it that your electorate is telling you?
Oh, I think people just want the horrors to end. They want a ceasefire. They want humanitarian aid to flow. They want the people of Palestine and Israel to live in peace. I think that's the clear theme throughout the majority of correspondence that I get. This war is horrific, and the loss of innocent life, both Palestinian and Israeli, is unacceptable to most Australians, and that's what they want to stop.
And what would be any conditions that Australia would attach to recognising a Palestinian state? I guess, as soon as we mention this, people say, well, what about the hostages still held by Hamas? Obviously, there's an important distinction there. The Palestinian Authority is not Hamas. It's not the same thing. And in fact, the Palestinian Authority probably has very little capacity to influence what Hamas does or doesn't do with the hostages. But what would Australia require the Palestinians to do in order for statehood to be recognised?
Well, I think the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have been pretty clear on this. We see no Palestinian state exist with the involvement of Hamas, so they cannot be involved. We'd like to see the return of hostages, and we want to see the peace process enhanced by recognition, not set back. So they're pretty clear and I think pretty reasonable conditions for an Australian government at this stage, and it'll be a decision made by the Prime Minister in consultation with the Foreign Minister and I'm sure others in due course. It's not if, but when, and we want to make sure that recognition comes with peace and an enduring peace.
Jerome Laxale is here, the Labor MP for Bennelong. Caroline in Lidcombe's called in just on the matter of what happens at our polling booths during election periods. You volunteered for Labor. What happened to you?
Well, my own seat things were pretty good, but I also volunteered in Fowler and Werriwa for some friends of mine who were running there. I've been a volunteer all my life. I'm 66. I'm a grandma. I'm not a big person. But I remember arriving at the Liverpool pre-poll and the level of abuse was just so extreme. I had a relative of one of the candidates down there screaming in my face, I'm a bludger, have I ever had a job? So someone walked past in a suit. So this person felt they could scream in my face, oh, well, that's a person with a job. They won't vote Labor, and screamed at me. And then we had all these people who wouldn't say where they were from, and they were the Brethren. So that went on, and then other volunteers of ours who were less experienced came up, was screamed at. If they thought there was anything they could pick on, one they thought was a bit effeminate, so then they started in on the homophobic slurs. And it just went on all day.
It sounds pretty full on, Caroline.
Yeah,
we are going to have to get to the news.
Yeah. And I'm disappointed because we do try to, despite what people think, opposing parties do try to set up a little bit of a, we're going to be here all day, let's play nicely. These people just weren't interested, and it was really disappointing.
Thank you very much for your call. Jerome Laxale, sounds like you've got plenty of evidence to start looking at. Thanks for your time this morning.
No worries. Thank you.
Jerome Laxale there, the Labor MP for Bennelong.